Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Spiritual Musings, and of course, with my friend Melissa. And we did an episode of this about 5 or 6 months ago, and did actually plan on following up with another one pretty soon after that, but it just didn't happen. We didn't get around to doing it. Things just happened in repeated succession, as things tend to do in life, and we just simply didn't get around to doing it. But I do recall very vividly that the feedback from that one was very good and everything else. And just recently, we've had the time to sort of reconnect a little bit, and thought it was a good idea to put another episode out. So that's what we're doing this evening, and I've decided to call this one Opportunity Knocks. Because, in times of crisis and in bad times in general, or for any problematic situation, we always have to look for the solution. And that is what keeps us going. I think it's the hope for that. Certainly when it comes to things, agenda or similar. But anyway, that's another story. And we'll touch on that all later on in the program, as it were. But, apologies to everybody for this having waited so long. Was not my plan at all. I do hope to make this a more frequent occurrence in the near future. I think it's quite a beneficial thing to do, because it does talk about the spiritual aspect of things, and it's something that I certainly can do with listening to. And I'm sure many of you can as well. It will either serve to be a nice refresher for a lot of people. There again, for many others, it will be new land. So either way you look at it, it's beneficial for all. And of course, in order for that to work, you need somebody to be able to talk to you about it. So no better person than, of course, Melissa, who joined me the first time round, and she's joined me again this time round. Managed to squeeze me in her busy schedule, as always. Lovely to talk to you, Melissa. How are you doing?
Hi Sven, I'm okay, thank you. It's really good to be here again, and yeah, I'm sorry it's taking so long. Everybody's been super hectic, and but yeah, here I am. So it's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, the pleasure's all mine. Absolutely. No, it's great that you can be back. It has been hectic, and time is whizzing by at a rate of knots. Certainly that's my experience. Everything seems to be going at such a speed at the moment. It's just untrue. But here we are, like it's supposed to have happened, on the back of a vigil that we had this weekend, which kind of became the catalyst for us to do this evening. And would you like to maybe explain, or, not in great depth, but sort of give a rough kind of mentions to what happened yesterday, what the idea was, what we were doing, like we didn't know what we were doing. But you know what I mean? What the sort of general gist and vibe was of what went down yesterday in Bournemouth Gardens, because, I mean, you know as well as anybody else. I mean, you helped put the flyers out and design them and all that sort of stuff, credit where it's due and everything. And so would you like to maybe mention one or two things about that?
Thank you. Yes, of course. So basically, a few of us went down to Bournemouth Gardens, and the Freedom of Choice group basically put up some posters with some lovely pieces of bamboo and made it look really beautiful. Basically just showing our respect for some of the people that have passed away and also been severely damaged by the jab. So lots of us stood there, and we had a beautiful white table with a white tablecloth and flowers. It was really very nice and peaceful. We had lots and lots of people interested in what was happening, lots of the public coming up to us asking what was happening. So lots and lots of people engaging, which is, really good when people ask questions and try to find out what's happening. A few of them took the light newspaper that was on the side of the table as well. And I think it was quite successful in what we were doing. It raised lots of awareness, so it was really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I have to say, I thought it was a really good way of doing things. It was a very nice approach. how long? It started at 1 o'clock, didn't it, in the afternoon? But I think it went on
It,
for a good few hours longer than planned, didn't it?
yeah, we only actually originally decided for it to be an hour, so between 1 and 2. But um, yeah, Peter, the organizer, actually stayed there until 5 or 6 in the evening because there was so much interest and people were just engaging all day, which is really good to see.
Yeah, it is very good to see. I like the idea that it will, like as we spoke about in the past, was the I suppose the attraction was for people to then approach us or those who were stood around. It could have been me, could have been you, whoever it was, and approach them at their leisure. And if they didn't want to approach anybody, they didn't have to. So it kind of took the pressure and the edge off that communication awkwardness that can sometimes happen.
Yeah, so rather than obviously protesting and having things on signs marching through the street, we just simply sat in the gardens, put the information on posters, like they were on cardboard, stuck in with bamboo sticks, so they were all displayed beautifully. And it was up to people walking through the gardens to just stop and read them at their leisure. And obviously, we were there if they wanted to ask questions and things, which quite a lot of people were. So that it was really good in the way that that worked actually, because much more people engaged with us and was asking questions. So it was a really good way of doing it.
Yeah, I thought it was as well. Um, I thought it was very good. Of course, there were one or two little moments where one had to keep a lid on one's emotions, let's say, very cautiously. But that's to be expected when you think that those banners, although I say banners, that sounds a bit cheap, but they weren't banners. There was a lot of thought and effort went into it. But you know what I mean? The messages that were put
Yeah.
there, they were there for a good 6 hours. So if you're going to have interaction with all those people who walked past because it was in the middle of a park, then, one or two incidents in all that afternoon is not bad going, is it really?
No, generally, I think it was really good. And I think I only saw one little heated discussion, but it wasn't, any drama or anything. It was just a heated discussion. But as you said, you know, with the subject, it's bound to get a couple of people, in a heated situation. But no, generally, it was really, really good. And like I said, people were engaging, people were asking a lot more questions. And it was really good. People were just generally more interested rather than people, you know, approaching the public with leaflets and shouting, one thing or another. With them actually approaching us, it just made it a lot more relaxed and easier, and people were a lot happier to come to us. So it was really good.
Yeah, and also, of course, the added advantage I felt most definitely was also the opportunity to network with people as well, because you're in a different environment, like you say, than you would be in a demo situation or a march environment where you don't have the chance really to stand around and have a little casual chit chat about whatever,
Yeah.
because excuse me, because it's all moving on at such a pace. You know what I mean? You're looking over your shoulder. You're trying to keep an eye on things. Just in general, it's what people do. They look out for each other, don't they, on marches and things like that.
Yeah.
But that, of course, didn't require that kind of anxiousness, if you want to call it that, or that kind of
No,
that focus that you normally would have on a march. It was much more relaxed, right?
it was really lovely, and a few of us either sat on the benches or sat on the grass quietly, just having a little chat and getting to know each other, and discussing what was happening, making new connections. So yeah, it was much more relaxed. It was a really nice atmosphere. Obviously, horrible circumstances because of what's happening and what we were remembering people that have passed and been severely affected, which is awful. But it was really nice the way it turned out, and it was a very successful day.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Totally agree. And we had a nice day as well, which was quite weather-wise, which was. So those of you
It
who
was
aren't from this
beautiful.
area might not see that as a very valid thing to announce, but trust me, good weather is like gold dust in this part of the world, recently anyway. So that's why I thought it was worth a mention. So the weather was fine as well, wasn't it?
It was beautiful. Yeah, I did get rosy cheeks and shoulders. So no, it was
There you go.
lovely. It
I
was
won't
really, really
mention
nice
I
weather.
won't. Yeah, I won't mention the pints of red wine that were handed out for free or anything like that. Yeah, no, I'm only kidding. There wasn't.
Cheeky.
No, there
No,
was
there
none.
wasn't.
Nothing of the sort was going down. There were kids there. There were people of all age groups. It's something I always go on about when we have our events in general. We always seem to, or it's not enough of it is said, or not enough is said of it, that it's generally a very good, honest cross section of society that always turns up. You know,
Yeah, there's a different age range, and like you say, children were there. There were all different ages. So yeah, it's
nationalities.
not just yeah, yeah, certainly.
You know, it's nationalities, all sorts of things. It's just amazing, isn't it, that it's not a national or international thing in that sense. It's it's something much deeper than that, you know. And those who kind of have realised that, they find themselves doing what the likes of yourself and Peter were doing on the weekend, and myself and others that do other things. But you know, we try and all mix in where we can, because only together will we manage to achieve something. And that's not
Yeah.
and that's not to prevent the inevitable from happening, but it's to kind of you know, make our lives a bit more bearable, let's say. Which brings me to a nice point, because you were saying there about interacting with people and allowing them to come over to you and talk. And I kept a bit of a backseat role yesterday, because I was doing, well, I did my own video, but I just wanted to sort of see also what was going on, and sort of have a little look, and also catch up with a few people that I've not seen for a while. But I was going to, it's something that you and I have been talking about very recently, and that is that, and it's also a conversation I've been having recently with quite a few people, and that is getting our heads around, first of all, gaining the acceptance that we're not going to be able to convert the masses. That's clearly not going to happen, because, you know, people seem to be so indoctrinated. I mean, the depths of the indoctrination have actually been, I think, underestimated.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess what I'm trying to say with that is, it's finding that point that we've addressed before, which is that bit where we talk about self-preservation and how much do you invest in trying to win people over, or how much of it is trying to perhaps create a community that's sound when we will definitely be needing it further down the road, and all that sort of stuff. And we spoke about it a little bit earlier on. You know, what is the difference between, let's say, you and an old school friend of yours? You'd be the same age, you know, you'd be roughly the same background, same upbringing, yet one person kind of sees it and the other person couldn't be further away from a wake-up call. I mean, what is that, you know?
Yeah, so that is exactly right. So, I mean, there seems to be a pattern of basically there seems to be, I mean, it's not the rule, obviously, for every single person, but there does seem to be one person per every family that seems to be awake to what's happening. That obviously isn't going to be the same for every single family, but generally that seems to be the case with the people that I've been speaking to recently.
Right.
Most of them seem to be the black sheep of the family, you know, and so yeah, I do have the same. So some of my friends the same age as me, they're completely different. I see what's going on. Obviously, we're spreading awareness. We can see what's happening, and some just cannot. Some are completely, you know, unable to see if you show them all of the evidence in the world. And it's like you said, we have to have self-preservation, because else we're literally giving away all of our energy. We're giving away every single ounce of energy that we have. Is exhausting, and we need that energy for us. You know, we are only at the start of all of this. A lot of people seem to think it's over for some reason, probably because we had Freedom Day. But yeah, we unfortunately are only at the very beginning, and some of us are here because we have these things called spiritual contracts. So before we're born, we actually know our purpose. We know why we're coming here. We know who we choose our parents for our lessons. You know, we know what we're coming here to do. And unfortunately, because of the world that we live in, where, you know, when we're born, we have a birth certificate, we, you know, come under the government's rules, we go to indoctrination camps, basically, we go to school, we go to college, we go to university, we're brainwashed. And luckily, some of us along the way start to realise most of the time it's in school. Some people are bullied, some of us will stare out the window and the teacher will say you're away with the fairies and concentrate. But that's our soul recognising the indoctrination and recognising that we're not supposed to be there, recognising that there should be more than what's going on in this classroom. So that's, I think, when people start to realise something's not quite right. Some people are not waking up right now because they're not supposed to. Maybe they haven't been, reincarnated enough times onto this earth. Maybe it's not the right time for them to be awake at this time. People, seem to have lots of different reasons why it could be. But at the moment, our time is not to be wasted on trying to wake up people that can't be woken up. Some people have had the jab and they're quite happy that they have. And unfortunately, it's because they're living in fear. But we can't waste all of our energy trying to convince people, crying over them, begging them to listen, because it's just not their time. So we have to be very careful with our energy. We have to put our boundaries up, because else it can be very draining and cause us lots of physical, mental and spiritual harm. So we do have to protect our boundaries and protect our energy.
There's if I could just, before I forget my little point there, because I just wanted to hook into what you were saying, I think I would not just be speaking for myself when I would suggest that is the crucial point, is to know where to get that balance right, that moment between self-preservation and thinking you can still convince somebody of the opposite of what they believe in. And this is the thing that I'm battling with at times, is that, first of all, subconsciously and consciously, actually, I'm worried that lot's ignorance and, let's say, slumber is going to be dragging me into the abyss. So, of course, I've got a bit of a hurry in all of this. I've got an invested interest in trying to make people realise that your lot's behaviour or lack of certain actions is what's prolonging this and probably going to make it irreversible. Well, already is, in my view, right? To then realising and accepting, we can fight no longer on that front. We now have to ensure and batten down the hatches kind of attitude, right? Because we don't want to be seen as taking on a defeatist attitude. Perhaps I certainly don't, because I don't like losing. I don't even like losing at drafts or tiddlywinks. Never mind when it's down to something like life and death, and especially when I know, and we all do in our communities most certainly, and certainly everybody yesterday that Vigil knows very well, and I would say some in uniform deep down also do as well, and we know from conversations we've had with them their reasons for continuing to carry out their work and all the rest of it, right? Then, it's one of those where we then say, okay, well, how far do we go, and how far do we not concede, but say, nah, we've got other fish, not necessarily bigger, but other fish to fry. And it's getting that moment right and knowing how to kind of, because certainly that's one thing that I struggle with sometimes in my thoughts. That is, I don't run around the house, clockwise and anti-clockwise. You know what I mean? It's not that extreme. Well, it may as well be. But you know what I'm trying to say? You know what I'm trying to say with that? It's like, it's that point, isn't it? Yeah. Where you sort of think, well, okay, yeah, but I still think I'm in with a shout.
Sorry.
No, go on. Please go ahead, because I have a tendency to waffle on, so you probably did the right thing there. Go for it. Sorry about that.
No, so you're right. It's absolutely, it's really, really hard to decipher when is the right time to stop, how far you're supposed to push, what you're supposed to be doing. It's really hard, and lots of people even have their different places. Some people are protesting. That's what they do. That's their thing. Some people have outreach work. They are handing out leaflets. They're reaching out to people. Some people are spiritual teachers and helpers that are reaching out. Some people are a part of common law and they're doing different things. So sometimes people think that there are groups of people who are doing nothing because they're not just protesting, but actually everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing at the right time. And that isn't all the same thing, because if everybody was only concentrating on protesting, then nobody would be building the new life that we have to have as, the backup, because they are creating their own new world around us, regardless of whether we want to be a part of that or not. And so we have to create the world that we want to live in, because that is going on whether we want to be a part of it or not, unfortunately. And so we have to be making these connections. We have to be, growing our own food, making contacts, people that are homeschooling their children. We should be all helping each other, looking after each other's children, teaching our children together as a big community, and really helping each other. And to be honest, most of the people who we'll call them awake to what's happening, they are already awake. But actually, drip by drip by drip, the truth is coming out more and more, and more and more and more people are slowly waking up. And unfortunately, we know the children are due to be vaccinated within the schools within the next, I think it's the first couple of weeks of September at schools. And then they're speaking about, I think it's 5 to 11-year-olds, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
This at the end of September. So, unfortunately, we have, we're at the very beginning, and we are going to have to go through a really, really terrible and hard time before we come out the other end of all of this. And we do have to make sure that we have our own things in place, other than fighting a battle that is carrying on around us regardless. And, like I said, drip by drip by drip, things are slowly happening. And this is a spiritual, psychological war, and, good always wins, and we have already won, but we have got to get through a lot of darkness before we come out the other end, unfortunately.
And when you say we have already won, how would you like to explain that a bit better for those who don't quite get that? Because many people would say, well, not really, I'm running around like a nervous wreck, so I feel like a bit of a loser in all of this.
So we basically have to have faith. We have to know that, when bad things happen, people get calmer, okay? So it comes back on them, doesn't it? We know that. I'm just trying to think how I can explain, but basically good always wins, and we've already achieved so much. And the reason the media are hammering down on things so much and panicking, and the timeline has sped up so much, is because they're panicking, because they know the truth's coming out, because a great awakening has happened. They want the great reset, but a great awakening is happening. And so, in 2020, people were having 20/20 vision. They could see what's happening. Their eyes were opening. The veil was coming off. So all of the darkness, is purging to the light. We can see what's happening more. And that's, becoming more and more and more obvious. And it's actually the same within every single person right now, which is why lots of people are feeling all of their traumas coming up, like lots of their triggers are happening. Some people are feeling like lots of things are coming to the surface, because not only is all of the darkness in the world coming to the surface and visible, but also all of the darkness within each and every one of us. So all of the traumas that we've not healed from, anything that triggers us, is all coming to the surface for healing right now, because we're going through a transformational period. We're transcending, we're ascending to a higher consciousness.
Right. So there's a lot to all of this, and much more, most certainly, than meets the eye. And it's quite interesting, because you were talking earlier, you were just alluding to how much work people have to put in. Let's say those of us, right, who are fighting an onslaught, really, that of mammoth, monstrous proportions. Let's have it right. It's you wouldn't even know where to attack, really. There's no level playing field. It's rigged against us so immensely, be it the media, be it the police. But I could name a plethora of things that have us starting at the wrong end. Excuse me. Before the roll of the dice has even commenced. And so right from the start, this was always going to be an uphill battle. And of course, a few people saw that very early on and took the appropriate precautions. And you're right. I think more and more people are waking up to it. I mean, I mentioned it on the video that I did, a 5-minute one from yesterday's vigil, where I was saying that a couple of people private messaged me and then phoned me subsequently because they wanted to know if there were any online groups that they could perhaps join because they'd had their vaccinations, realised they'd made a mistake, and now refusing to let the kids be vaccinated based on their own personal experience. But of course, they've since lost their job because they're no longer fit enough to carry it out, for example, and all that sort of stuff. So you certainly have people who are going back on their absolute, how can I say, that they were convinced many weeks ago that it was the right thing to do, absolutely convinced, and now, a total U-turn. And it's very strange to be in that position where you've gone from being ridiculed more or less by the same people to suddenly being called and asked for advice as to how they can connect up with people who I told them about months ago before they went ahead with the procedures. And it's like, and I'm not the only one this has happened to, by the way. I know a few people who have had people contact them privately, and kind of almost with the tail between their legs a little bit. And by the way, it's not a time to gloat or anything like that. That is not what I mean by that. It's just a very uncomfortable, awkward situation to be in.
Yeah. And I think it just highlights the importance of, love always wins over war. We have to always be peaceful. We have to always show kindness, compassion, and love. Because if we go out with our fighting hats on and ego, and that's not going to get anybody anywhere. People will get their backs up, they'll dig their heels in, and it will completely go wrong. Whereas if we always show love, compassion, and kindness, they will come to us and say, I've made a terrible mistake, and we will be there with open arms, ready to guide them and help them. I've had so many people contact me throughout this last, however long it's been, a year and a half, because they're awakening as well. They don't really know what's happening, or somebody's had an injection and they wish they hadn't. And, that's waking up a lot of people as well, because people are being, vaccine damaged or unfortunately passing away, and that's waking up people. So it's like I said, drip by drip by drip, people are slowly seeing, the cracks appear and they're becoming wider. And unfortunately, the children, we really don't want them to be done at all, and there's no reason on earth why they should be done. I mean, let alone anybody else. But
well, there is for
the children.
there is for a particular niche of person, unfortunately. But well, or whatever they are. But yeah, and it's funny because
we are there just to help guide them when they're ready, basically.
Yes.
Be there with open arms and guide them and support them.
Absolutely.
It's a shock when people are actually going through their spiritual awakening. It's quite a traumatic thing for a lot of people. Some people get really very depressed and even suicidal, and they don't know what's happening. They really don't understand. And some people can go into shock because the system that they've grew up knowing and think that they can rely on, suddenly, they're not quite living in the world that they think they are, and it's quite traumatic. And so there's lots of, spiritual workers and counsellors and people that are there to support and guide them. And like I said, we all have our different roles to play.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say that, getting back to what you were saying with all the different roles and all the different things that have to be done, it just goes to show what has to be done. I mean, if you were to believe some people that I know, they're probably thinking all we do is hang around with yobs all day with nothing better to do but to chain ourselves to fences somewhere, in a futile attempt to change the price of bread. But of course, that's not what this is all about. And anybody who thinks that, then I'm afraid they don't really want to know, do they? And that's. I
think the truth is, unfortunately, I mean, as you know, I'm a hypnotherapist as well, and unfortunately, what's happened as well with the television and the news, if somebody listens to something, for instance, the news, for 21 to 28 days, they are actually hypnotized, that their brain patterns have changed to believe something. They have a belief system now. The brain pathways have changed. Their belief system has changed because they've actually listened to something for a certain amount of time, and it's actually programmed their brain. They genuinely believe what they've been watching and what they've been told, because it's in their subconscious mind. It's been programmed to believe that. So if one person goes up to them and says, by the way, this is actually happening, they will laugh and have a go at you because their brain's been programmed to know differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. I remember a few months ago, I remember getting a load of stats from the Office for National Statistics, and I remember showing it to somebody, just basically comparing all the mortality rates, that sort of thing, whatever it was in particular, and they still were shaking their head.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
They
well,
will.
what can you... And actually, and I stopped to think about this, and I remember afterwards thinking to myself, what am I doing this for? The burden of proof is on you lot.
Yeah.
You're the one making the claim here. What am I trying to prove to you? I have my reasons for not going through with something, and I shouldn't even be put in a situation really to have to explain that to anybody, full stop. But what I can do is I can share some information with you that might help you wake up to what's going on. But no, it's the shake of the head before they even look at what you're showing them is often the response.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, I've been in this situation with, people I love, and, unfortunately, I've tried to share things that I know and things that I've researched, and no matter what anybody tries to do or tries to tell anybody,
Yeah.
ultimately the decision is up to them. And that's another thing. We are on our own path. We make our own choices, we make our own decisions, and people have to do that, and we learn by our choices. Sometimes they're good choices, sometimes they're bad choices, but we learn from our choices, we learn from our mistakes. We have lessons to learn along the way, and if we don't learn the lessons in this lifetime, what we're supposed to learn, then we'll have to come back and redo it again in the next reincarnation. Sometimes it's just not people's time.
So if we're going to go by that scale of measurement, then what we would suggest is that anyone who is awake is quite close to their goal. Then is that right?
I don't know that there's a goal, but basically, when people are waking up, it just means that they've woken up from the programming and indoctrination.
Absolutely,
and
of course.
Finding themselves, and they're remembering who they are.
Yeah. And see, this is also the importance of the community, isn't it? Of course, because it's like when we were talking, for example, about my daughter who lives over in Germany. Right now, I can talk to her for 10 minutes on the phone, and I can have her full concentration and have her in total agreement. Of course, I will. But then once we end the conversation, she's back in her environment, and I'm not there. Or even if I was there, it can happen to somebody who lives on the other side of the street, whatever. You're back into that environment, and that's it. You're in that mold of thinking again. It's almost impossible, I would say, to really stick true to your guns when you're surrounded by mainstream thinking people only. And that's the importance of community, and that's what I was going to lead to the other point I was going to mention to you, and we spoke about this earlier, and that was that one or two people that we've noticed, more and more of actually, who have just suddenly discovered there are like online communities or groups or whatever. They've been feeling quite alone in all of this and didn't know who to talk to or anything like that about these topics.
Definitely. I've come across quite a few people within the last year or so who didn't know anything about spirituality or anything happening in the world or what was happening with the injections, and suddenly they think they've just discovered things, and they feel very alone. They don't know anybody. They're the only person in their area, or all of their family aren't the same. And so it's lovely, like I said earlier, that we can be there to hold out our hands and say we're here, and introduce them to different members of the community that are like-minded. People align with like-minded people, and it's very important that we do build local communities to help each other, because it's like we said, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. We've got to go through very difficult and challenging times, and over the next couple of months is going to be very challenging indeed, but we have to make sure that we are there for each other. And even the internet, we don't really know how long Facebook or anything else is going, any of the internet sites are going to be on for.
Yeah.
And so it's very, very important that we have real connections. We know where people live. We have a a day and a time or something that we meet, make real connections like we used to when we were young, because if the internet suddenly goes off and we can't get hold of anybody, people who are relying on mobile phones and internet and things like that, they're going to find themselves stuck and cut off from society because they're not used to mixing with people in real life, going around each other's houses and,
Oh, well, that's a very, very good point, because the going around other people's houses, that was a pastime of most kids' lives, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When we were 14, 13, 14, 15, whatever. But nowadays, who does that? Absolutely. And that's a real issue. I mean, if I got stuck one day and let's say everything did go down, I'm lucky because I do know of a few people who live in and around me in my area. I'd say within a square mile, I know a good 5, 6, 7 people actually who are of the sort of, lean towards what we're talking about and see it the way we do. And that's all right. But it took a while to know and to realize where these people are or whatever. And you have to sort of, there's a lot of.
When I first.
Well, the thing is, I was just going to say, sorry, just to round off the pipe, I was just going to say there's a lot of distrust and all that sort of stuff. And especially with what's gone on recently, without me going into too much detail and getting too negative about stuff. But, people have been grassed up and people have called authorities on other people behind their backs. And I think they're going to be things that we'll be picking up. That will be one element of stuff that I would suggest people will have to not look too far to realise who it is getting up to stuff. People have to be very vigilant because I think that's going to be a real issue. And that's why having a place maybe to meet up regularly or whatever, like you just said, Melissa, whereby if somebody is not there one Saturday, there's something going on and there's maybe a plan B put in place or whatever. I don't know. There must be ways of doing it, but I think that's definitely something that needs to be looked at and actually
also, what
done.
What I've been speaking about or thinking about for the last few months as well, and I think I have made a few connections with people, is that I'm going to be starting a directory of people, like making a website so that people can have awake services as well, like connections with people more. So say, for instance, you need, I don't know, a hairdresser or a teacher or a spiritual guru. I don't know.
Right.
We've got our services in one place as well. So
everybody needs their own personal spiritual guru, Melissa.
But yeah, I think it's really important that we have connections of like-minded people, and that it's really important as well that maybe at one point we're not going to be able to access money or something. We don't know what's around the corner, and so we can exchange services with like-minded people. We can help each other, we can barter, we can exchange.
And that is why I call this episode Opportunity Knocks, for that very reason. Because that is exactly where we have to, well, I say we have to. When I use those words, I don't mean that in that sort of way. I'm just saying it's the way I express myself. But, I get enthusiastic about things like that. But I just sort of say, from my perspective, certainly, that's where I've got an opportunity to network correctly with people, really get some good people in my life. I already do have, and I'm actually quite glad and I'm very grateful. But, I'd like more of the same. And I'd like, what I mean? There needs to be lots of depth to it and all that sort of thing. And it's important also for your mental state of mind and all that. There's so many positives to it and good knock-on effects to all of that, isn't
Definitely.
there?
I mean, even coaches need a coach. I was speaking to another life coach this morning, and we're actually helping each other with sessions at the moment. I'm helping him with some Reiki healing and inner childhood healing, and he's helping me with some personal life coaching things that I need to address. So, we're just helping each other by exchanging services, and that's really important because, no matter how much work you think you've done, or no matter how awake you think you are, people are still human and they need that support and kindness,
And that's it, because it's easy to lose track and also lose your grounding a little bit around all of it. It is very, very easy. I mean, I think I mentioned this before now, that I have my moments where I kind of feel like I just want to isolate almost and not really bother with the world at all. And then I have moments where I can hardly control myself and almost wouldn't mind doing cartwheels naked down a high street kind of thing,
Naked down the high
Well,
street, please don't.
yeah. Sorry for those who now cannot get rid of that visual, but I'm afraid that's what I'm here for, is to question everything. So, but you know what I mean. It's keeping those sort of those mood swings, I guess, is one way of saying it. I don't like using that because that has always brought kind of detrimentally onto people, wasn't it? It was a bit of a stigma, but certainly, those emotional kind of changes that I certainly experience on a daily basis, no doubt about that. And I try and keep those peaks and troughs, those waves and all that sort of, I try and flatten them out as much as possible, but it sometimes doesn't work like that. And it's not
it's not just you, Sven.
Exactly,
the whole collective, world is going through massive shifts right now. And you only have to look at the Schumann resonance, which is like the Earth's heartbeat, the Earth's frequency. It changes a lot. And recently it's kind of been off the grid, and so people are experiencing a lot of emotional things. Some people are feeling really, really tired and needing to rest and exhausted. You need lots more grounding and water. Some people are getting headaches. Lots of changes are going on, lots of shifts are happening. And also, this weekend we've had the blue moon, which is also a massive shift. There's lots and lots and lots of changes, and where collectively, people are waking up, all of their darkness is coming to the surface for healing. There's constantly lots of shifting, lots of energetic changes. There's things happening constantly. And so we have to be really mindful that we do ground and go within nature and meditate daily, like really make sure we're rested and grounded, because sometimes we do wake up and we feel a bit depleted, and we just need to make sure that we have extra self-care and self-love, and we're looking after our own needs, because all of this is quite draining for everyone. It's not a regular thing that's happening, and we do have to preserve our energy and make sure we're completely grounded, completely rested, and have the energy, because at the end of the day you can't pour from an empty cup, and we have to really remember that. And the problem is, most people who are healers and teachers and everybody will know that unfortunately when you're an empath or a healer or a teacher, you do give out a lot of your energy, and or a lot of people put people before themselves, and they forget to look after their self. And so it's vital, it's really, really crucial that we protect our energy and to have those boundaries in place.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have definitely, I would agree, some interesting times ahead. There's no doubt about that. And, I'm just thinking there is so much to think about, really, that actually when you begin to do so, your head kind of falls off. You know what I mean? So it's so it's one of those things. It really is. When you actually sit back and you have a conversation with somebody who's on the same sort of wavelength, and you start chatting, then one cup of tea very quickly becomes three, because it's not only is it rabbit holes, but it is and it isn't, because it's actually we're living through it. This is the thing. It's not like we're looking at history books and we're looking back and we're speculating and we're trying to cross T's and dot I's. We're not. We are crossing T's and dotting I's, but we're seeing it unfold right in front of us.
Yeah.
And the scary bit, I guess, the scary / bemusing, baffling thing is that some of us can see it, and a heck of a lot simply cannot see it. That's just the thing.
I think the main thing is as well is obviously we know that the media and the government and all the rest of it, they want everybody in fear. They want to
of course
people. They want everybody to be unsure on what's happening, and they are divide and conquer tactics. It's what the army have been taught in their training. They know, lots of people are actually recognizing that now within the forces and starting to see what's happening. So that's another amazing thing that some people are seeing in every kind of area. And we may think that, everybody's not waking up, blah, 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 but actually they really are. And, obviously the same as with everybody, standard, the public, some of them are awake, some of them aren't. It's the same in the services. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But collectively, as a whole, drip by drip, day by day, people are waking up.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, and I think that is also fairly accurately, I should say, reflected in the still continuing media push to get people needled up. I mean, the incentives continue to roll, the advertising campaign continues to roll on. They still roll out an ex-Beatle. I thought the Beatles only had 4 members, and I think they're only down to 2 now, and one of them is dubious. So, I mean, they're running out of people, yet they still keep rolling them out. I don't know how they do it. So clearly through that campaigning and everything else, that PR push that's going on, that to me tells a different story, really. It almost gives me a bit of hope in the sense that
But that's where
that
you
smacks
have
of
to
death.
laugh and be happy, because they're
that's what I'm
trying
saying.
so hard.
But this is the point the point I'm making is exactly that, and the fact that that is definitely a desperate act, because you wouldn't need to have to do that otherwise, would you? That's the conclusion I draw. But then again, what conclusions can you draw? That could be yet again another masterstroke and another leading us into or down, a false sense of security or whatever. You just don't know.
If they were really that interested and concerned, and if it was truly about people's health, then they wouldn't be offering Uber Eats and takeaways for teenagers and a shot for a shot. And
Well, I mean, it's funny because even at places like, and I'll say it openly because I'm not really too fussed about it anymore. Really, I used to be a bit more guarded about this topic, but I'm not going to be anymore. But even at the football club where I work, for example, it's the same sort of thing. We haven't officially been told we don't have to do certain things anymore. They would rather you continued, but in actual fact, you don't have to wear a face mask. You don't have to do anything there. You just go there, you do your job, and that's it. But they won't discourage you to do so. They'll still try and it happened to me on the weekend. Somebody came up to me and asked me where mine was, and I said, "Well, I'm exempt." As thinking to myself, "What are you asking me for anyway?" And that was the end of that. But it just that normality that kind of has kicked in around it all.
Soon it'll be, where's your papers? Have you heard that before?
Yeah. Well, you heard this one before. Put a cross next to your name if you've tested negative. Well, yeah, great, thanks. So, like I said to you earlier, that they'll be putting a red cross on my door next.
I mean, in Australia, they're having a poster you have to have outside your house if you're quarantining, and they'll be checking up on people. That's happening in Australia at the moment, apparently. I've seen. So, yeah.
Australia is fulfilling its role as an ex-old colonial prison of the old British Empire. It's just all nonsense. I mean, I've never seen so much theatre in all my life. The stuff that they're...
It's definitely heading towards martial law there. I mean,
in
certain places it's okay, but in other places they've got helicopters and pepper spray.
Yeah, well, you would think that. Yet when you talk to people from there, it's business as usual in a lot of places, and it's a bit, we just don't know. But what we do know is most definitely what's affecting us here. We can see what's going on in our lives, and that is pretty much the same for everybody worldwide at the moment, and that is the key. That is the biggest giveaway of all that people should be seeing.
Things do normally start in one country and then other countries follow. So it's interesting just to watch to see what is happening, and then we know what to expect as well.
They do, but this time round, every country is following suit with each other. And normally, traditionally, you would have countries doing things totally differently because the French never liked the Brits, or the Americans never liked the Canadians, or the Russians would do something different to whoever, And it's like, but that's not the case on this. This one, the agenda is the agenda, and that's it. And it's a it's
worldwide.
It supersedes nationalism, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that in itself is the biggest giveaway of all, that it is exactly that, an agenda that's being rolled out. But
in all of this, we have to remember to keep faith and to keep within our heart space and keep grounded, because it's so easy to, get sucked into that fear and worry about things that are going to happen. And fear actually reduces the immune system, which makes you more susceptible to picking up things anyway.
Yeah.
And, with people that have been socially distanced in the past, they're not within their heart's electromagnetic field. They're not within their aura. They're not having that close, contact with people. And some people unfortunately are still living a bit like that and worrying, and it's really very sad. And we have to remember to, not think too much, and it's very difficult, but not think too much and not worry too much, because while everybody's panicking and worrying and scared of dying, they're forgetting to live and enjoy their life.
Absolutely. And that's why I say opportunity knocks, because there used to be a show called Opportunity Knocks back in the day.
I was going to say it rang a bell. I wasn't quite sure what it was.
There used to be a show, Opportunity Knocks, and I think what happened was bands or whatever went on stage. Or whatever. I think it was back in the 60s or something like that. I think it's a pretty old show. I do recall my dad mentioning it many years ago. And then they would vote, and whoever was the best one, it's a bit like what we have now with X Factor or whatever, something like that. But in the old way, when the TV was black and white and all that.
I haven't watched TV for about 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to be one of those cool guys and say I don't have a telly. I do have a telly, actually, and I do sometimes watch it. But I like to know what's going on, on the dark side, if that makes sense.
So it's nice to keep up.
I keep an eye on the news and see what they're saying. You know what I mean?
And see what's happening.
Yeah.
As long as we don't get drawn into it and depressed and obsessing about it, because it's quite an easy trap for people to fall into and get obsessed over, and it then consumes you. And that's the problem. We have to be, building a life worth living. It's good for people to have a routine. So, get up in the morning, make your bed, do a meditation, have your breakfast, your fruit or water or whatever it is you have, and, maybe yoga or a little walk outside, and just make sure you have your routine. And it's really good to have a gratitude diary as well, because it actually helps us to be grateful for everything that we have. And when we're going through these, things feel like they suck that day or something, if you just think, well, we have running water, and I just go through, I'm so grateful I have running clean water. I have a distiller. I'm so grateful that I have some food. I'm so grateful. We have to remember these little things, because, some people unfortunately haven't got any of those things. They're living on the street, or they're severely affected. They're, disabled or had a jab that's affected their life. Like, we are so lucky, and we have to remember those things. And by being grateful, by living, in gratitude, it actually attracts positivity and happiness, and it attracts things to us.
And that gives us the opportunity that we're talking about to have that manifest into positive things to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And create amongst a community or whatever. And that starts with basic networking, the things we spoke about earlier, and why those things like the Vigil that was held yesterday they become key components in all of this moving forward. And I hate it when commentators say moving forward, so I thought I'd say it myself this time, just to be oh dear. Anyway, see, it gets to us all eventually. Yes, so I mean they were the sort of points I wanted to touch on, because I think in the last, we haven't really spoken properly about any of this for a good 6 months, Melissa. And if you think about what's happened,
it's been some time, hasn't it?
Yeah, and if you think about the roller coaster ride endured by us all in the last 6 months, it's a lot has happened, hasn't it? Really, if you think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been quite eventful and traumatic for quite a few people. Definitely. And we do, I mean, all of us, I'm not excluded, we have to every single day practice gratitude, practice mindfulness, practice grounding and being within nature, and making sure that we are rested, and have those boundaries, rather than giving out all of our energy and obsessing and worrying and living in fear. We have to be creating a life that we want to be in. We're having to, like I said earlier, these things are being built around us, whether we want them to or not at the moment. There's lots of things being done to stop it. There's lots of things happening behind the scenes, which is amazing. There are lots and lots of things happening. But yeah, we have to remember to do positive things, to be within our heart space, to be happy and live and not be in fear, because it reduces the immune system, and it's no good for us.
Yes, I totally agree. And just briefly to mention, with what happened yesterday, how do you think that's looking for the near future? Do you think these sorts of initiatives will continue? Just for those who may be wondering, well, the vigil sounded good. Are we going to have any more of those in the future? Do you think? How do you think that's looking?
I think we're going to be discussing what's happening. It was definitely very successful. The way it went, it was very, it was very good in my opinion. And I think it was a very good way of doing things.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that I think we should continue to do, but obviously it's a group decision which has to be discussed. But yeah, I think that we should be definitely doing a lot more of that, because it was such a successful thing where people were approaching us and interacting, and definitely, where the children are coming up now, where it's time for them to be, vaccinated at school and things like that. Personally, this is only my opinion, of course. Everybody has their own path. But for me, if I was, a parent with their child in school at the moment, for me, I would be homeschooling and developing a community that I want to live in, creating and being that change that I want to see in that world, because schools are indoctrination camps. They are programming the children. They are, they have a vaccine rollout to do, and unfortunately a lot of parents aren't aware that there is this Gillick competence where actually they don't need parents' consent to inject your children if they are 12 years or over. And that's something that I would really like parents to be more aware of and to be, really looking at. And perhaps if you don't want your children vaccinated, you might like to either keep them off school that day, or, maybe even homeschool. But obviously everybody has their own choice, their own path. But for me, I know what I'll be doing.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And do you know of any groups or anything that anybody listening to this, that you've explained it nicely? Is there anywhere that people can go where they know? Are there any groups online where maybe they could get a bit more information around this that you know off the top of your head?
There are lots of homeschooling groups already, but most of them, I think, that are on there aren't awakened to all of what's happening. So that's something that we are currently building, and like I said, we're trying to get a directory of people together, where they're teachers and different things.
Right. So
so that is something.
How will people find out about this, though? How will they know about this? Would it be best for me to just maybe lean them towards the stand up South Coast group, for example, and just keep their eye on any new posts in there? Or how would we ever find out about this?
There are a couple of groups on Facebook already.
Right.
I'll have to find out the names of them. I think there's like a Southwest Awakens tribe group or something like that. I can't remember the names of the groups off the top of my head.
Okay.
But there are a couple of groups floating around on Facebook, and I am definitely going to be collecting information, taking people's names and email addresses and services that they provide within Dorset, which is obviously where we are, so that if there's somebody needs, so for instance a counsellor or a teacher or a hairdresser or anything, then they will go to this website, which will be made hopefully sooner rather than later,
right,
and they will have somewhere to go, which is a place we can contact people. And there are lots of awoken groups on Facebook already. Off the top of my head, unfortunately, I can't remember the names of, but there are lots of communities online which are, coming together now.
Okay, so well, that's fair enough. So what we can do is when we
can always get it popped in the comments after this. I can have a look and.
Yeah, well, when we get to the point of, for example, having a website or anything like that, then what we would definitely do is make an announcement on a podcast like this. That's what I would suggest. Maybe that would be a good idea. And in the meantime, if there's anything worthwhile putting in that I know for sure, then I'll put something in the comments, of course, below. Otherwise, we do have a Stand Up South Coast group on Facebook. and I am also on Facebook. I've not mentioned you at all, Melissa, because I don't know if that's something that you would entertain or not, but I don't mind if
Yeah,
people...
that's fine. If I do lots of different work with people. I'm currently reaching out actually to lots of veterans, nurses, people that are going through spiritual awakening, people with, traumas to heal.
So they can find you under the name on Facebook. Under what name?
On Facebook, I'm Melissa Louise.
Okay.
So yeah, I am on Facebook. I have a business page as well, but under Melissa Louise, you can find me.
Excellent.
But yeah, so I am currently doing lots of outreach work, and if anybody needs spiritual guidance, or
Yes.
inner child healing, or have any traumas that they need healing, or triggers that are happening, or just generally need any guidance or anything at all, then by all means get in contact and I'd be happy to help.
There we go. That's excellent. So I think that is a good place to leave it for the moment, because we've gone through quite a bit of information there, I think, and we've rounded it off nicely with a way of being able to at least connect up. I know it's only Facebook, but it's certainly it's a point of connection, isn't it? And
I'll put the couple of groups that I'm aware of in the comments as well afterwards.
Yeah, no problem at all, and I'll pin it so it's at the top of all the comments should there be any more coming after that. And other than that, what I would suggest is any other announcements that come where we would like to channel people to, maybe to make things easier for them to connect up or whatever, then I can say right now, hand on heart, that I will then announce it through a podcast like this with Melissa, if it involves that sort of thing. And if it's something totally different and independent of what we were talking about, then I'll probably pop my own video out and do it in a new segment or something like that. But certainly when it comes to anything like this, then we will do it together, probably, Melissa, if you have the time, on a podcast, and go into more detail when it requires, I suppose. Anything else that you'd like to say to close out on before we go?
I don't think so. Just obviously make sure that you live within your heart space and, keep rested, have self-love, self-care. Make sure that you're getting outside in nature. If, people are getting slightly depressed or have anxiety, just make sure that you're, getting enough outside time to do grounding, drinking enough water, just really looking after yourself. That's all. And thank you ever so much for having me again, and I'm sorry it was such a long time.
Oh, no, not at all. I think we all had a lot going on, didn't we, to be absolutely fair about things. And, I kind of, I feel like I neglected quite a few people myself, actually. But to be honest with you, there was no malice behind any of that. And it's the way things just panned out over the last few months. And I think that's gone, a lot of people have experienced that. A lot of people, including yourself, you've had a busy time of it, and I know, we know more about ourselves as well that we necessarily wouldn't put over a podcast because we don't want people jumping off buildings. But you know how I mean that, and it's gallows humor, but it's the only way to sometimes approach that sort of topic, because that's my way of kind of. But it's true though, isn't it? Everybody has their crosses to bear and things going on in their lives, and
we do all have all of our personal things going on, and we are only human, and
absolutely
that's why it's so important to have those connections and to have a community around us, because sometimes it can feel very isolating. We can feel very alone, and we are
yeah, absolutely.
all of us are vulnerable at some point or another and need that support, and it's just nice to have those connections.
Totally. As the old saying goes, you can be in a room full of people all alone, and it's all about who you have with you, who's by your side. It's who's by your side, isn't it? It's the quality, not the quantity, as it were. And you're not going to win. I don't have all the answers for everybody. I don't even have all the answers for myself. But
a lot of the time, when we can't go externally, if we don't want to go out into the world and it's all too overwhelming, then it's really important to go within ourselves. Do some meditation. Just close your eyes and do some deep breathing.
Yes.
Just really connect deeper into our own soul rather than looking externally all the time, because this is something, and if any of my friends are listening, they'll probably laugh and nod their head. I'm a fine one to say what we should be doing, and people should listen to their intuition, and then I need to listen to that myself, because sometimes I forget,
Yeah.
and I look to somebody else to assist and say, am I doing this right, or what? What do you think? When actually we shouldn't. We need to go within ourselves. We need to trust our intuition. We need to go within, and that's really, really important, because we are on our own path, and I've said that a lot tonight, but we are individuals. We are all different. We are all going through each individual different thing.
And we are all unique. So, whatever mainstream science might want to tell you or whatever, it's all nonsense. We are most definitely all unique, and there is absolutely no doubt in my mind about that.
And only we know what's right for us deep inside of our soul.
Indeed.
And that's why we have to listen to it and go inside more, rather than externally looking for validation and acceptance or whatever else you want to search for. It's always within us. And this is a whole other subject, but that's why there was religions created to separate people, and to also look for a God externally to ourselves.
Yeah.
Each and every one of us are creators and manifestors of our own lives.
Yep. And on that note, on that reality bombshell, excellent. Thank you, Melissa. A heartfelt thanks from me to you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
No, of course. I'm glad you agreed, and I'm glad you found the time to do so. I think it's good. It did us both good to get together and do this again. And it gives us an opportunity to talk in general about this sort of stuff, because there's a lot to it. But then again, there's also some simplicity to it all. And I think, if I was to make any finishing comments, then it would be that it sometimes in simplicity lies the way. Keeping things simple, in my experience, certainly with other things in the past. Was often
living mindfully in the present moment, without fear, without judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to always remember one thing, if nothing else, and that is all we ever have is the here and now. So on that note, I wish everybody a good evening, and enjoy the rest of the week. Don't let the you-know-whats get you down and all that. And Melissa, you and I, I'm sure we'll talk again very soon. So I'd like to thank you again for your time and your energy and everything else. Much appreciated.
Thank you very, very much for having me, and we'll do it sooner next time.
Yeah, no, we will do indeed. And to everybody else listening, thank you very much. I'd appreciate your comments as well, of course. And if anybody else has any ideas regarding the topic we spoke about, or indeed has any knowledge of things like groups and stuff like that Melissa and I may find of interest, then feel free to throw those in the comments too. Otherwise, you know how to get hold of Melissa on Facebook. Sorry?
Sorry, I interrupted you then. I thought you'd finished.
Yeah, no, not quite, but yeah, go ahead.
No, just what you said, really. If anybody does want to contact me, or they know how to get hold of you, but just pop a comment in or reach me on Melissa Louise on Facebook.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you.
No worries at all. And to everyone else, until the next time, speak to you all soon. Take care. Look after yourselves. Ta-ta for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.